Good evening and welcome to the Cut Podcast. I'm Jay Jones, your host, and tonight we will be having a discussion on common ground. We're going to talk about the things that actually that we have in common versus the things that divide us, and how we need to be more focused on those things rather than the things the media tries to persuade us to have conversations about. Um, We'll explore the economic similarities that unite Americans across. Just a second. We'll discuss the things that unite us. As I said, actually, let's see here. It's like we're having some technical difficulties. We often hear that America is hopelessly divided, rural versus urban, red versus blue. But when you look at the kitchen table issues that keep people divided, we have to understand that those are things that we actually have more in common than we are divided on. Let's see here. Okay. So somehow, though, we don't seek often enough to understand the negative impacts of actions taken by the rich on the poor. We'll explore how concerns about healthcare costs, housing affordability, and economic security transcend the divisions we see in the media. Whether you're joining us from a city apartment or a farmhouse, this conversation is about the economic realities we all face. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is ask a question. Right now, the world, America and the world, is really struggling from the impact or feeling the impact of decisions made for the mega wealthy, and the decisions that are seemingly not made on behalf of the 99% or the working class of Americans. How do we find comfort and solidarity in ourselves and in the things that we know to help us get beyond this and to help us get through these next few years? It's going to be a challenge, but we have to figure out how to do it. In my perspective, or from my perspective, I think this is the ideal time to really work on relationships, public relationships, to work on understanding and kind of knowing where the problems lie, where the problems come from. And I think that'll help us become a more united America. So before we dive into the to those concerns, though, let's talk about the narrative of division that dominates our national conversation. First, if you turn on cable news, you think that Americans have nothing in common. We're portrayed as living in completely different realities. We're divided by culture, values, and worldview. But extensive polling and research tell a different story. So when Americans are asked about their top concerns and open-ended questions, economic issues consistently rank in the top across all demographics. Everyone, whether you're wealthy, whether you're poor, whether you think you're wealthy, whether you think you're poor. Uh, but a 2023 Pew Research study found that 78% of Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, listed economic concerns as their primary worry, the things that keep them awake at night. What's happening here? The issues that genuinely unite us, which are the concerns about making ends meet, affording health care, securing stable housing, and building a future for our children, receive far less media attention than divisive social issues. This isn't accidental. There's a long history of powerful interests using social and cultural wedges and wedge issues to prevent economic solidarity. When working people across demographic lines recognize their shared economic challenges, they often organize for better conditions. This threatens those who benefit from the economic status quo. Again, the conversation that we're not having, or we seem to not be having, is the difference or the division between the rich and the poor, and how economic challenges impact the wealthy versus how they impact the poor or the working class. And again, I keep saying the poor because if we look at it in terms of the differences between earnings, the upper 1% is just so divided from the lower 99% that there is no real middle class these days. It's either you're working class or you're wealthy. So let's be clear. The cultural differences between regions and communities are very real and meaningful. Rural and urban Americans often do have different daily experiences and perspectives, but these differences are magnified while our economic commonalities are minimized in our national discourse. Let's talk about shared economic challenges. And I mean, what are some things that we have similar, whether you're urban and rural? And we can determine for ourselves what urban versus rural means. I mean, a lot of times it's based on perspective, whether you're urban, you have urban perspectives or rural perspectives. Um, let's look at some specific economic challenges that affect Americans regardless of where they live or how they vote. Healthcare costs. Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America, affecting rural and urban communities alike. In Appalachian Kentucky, for instance, and inner city Detroit, which are two totally different ends of the spectrum, families face the same impossible choices seeking between medical care and paying other bills. There were two stories that I listened to online. One was a farmer who was discussing medical debt after cancer treatment and talking about how he had to take out second mortgages and all these other things just to pay the medical bills of his after his wife passed from cancer. And at the same time, he still has not really made a dent in those payments, and he's getting the calls and the threats to seize his property and everything else. So those are real challenges. On the same hand, there was a gentleman who was a teacher with the same issues. He was diagnosed with cancer, and after the treatment and everything, the bill came to be in a huge amount that there's no way he'd be able to pay in this lifetime. And those were his words. And I guess the bottom line here is, regardless of how well off we think we are, a really, really bad medical condition or medical diagnosis can really change our perspective on how well off we are or not. So the details may differ. Of course, again, you have a farmer and a teacher. The farmer who had no insurance versus the teacher who did have insurance, and the outcome was the same. They're both being threatened with letters and threats to seize their property and those things. So the details may differ, but the fundamental challenge is the same: a healthcare system that prioritizes profit over people's well-being. And just from the word system, a healthcare system, it lets us know that there's a problem there, because a system requires the ability to basically carry itself based on the profit that it is receiving from the public. So the fact that we don't have a healthcare system that actually takes care of the people who are Americans, the people, and our government is supposedly by the people, for the people. The fact that we don't have a healthcare system that works for all of us and without putting us into such problematic circumstances is bad enough. And again, the purpose of this podcast is to give us the information we need to think differently. It's not to provide the total solution. In my own opinion, I think the solution is the understanding. It is the understanding that we can't listen to everything that we hear on the media and take it as the gospel. We have to be able to think outside the box. We have to look at things as they are and realize that our reality is much different than someone else's reality. And there are many factors that determine that difference. Socioeconomics is, to me, one of the biggest factors that determine those differences. So next